everyone who we would meet in the first at least 12 months of our startup journey would tell us that we're idiots, like we're complete, like crazy. Like, why would you be doing this in New Zealand for so many reasons? It's not going to work.
Did you see that as fuel or?
Initially, I believed it. Initially, I was like, well, yeah, that's the way of life. But I'm so pissed that nothing's been done by people who have a lot more mandate and power and way to do that I'm just going to do whatever I can, and then somebody else can take over. But then when I started noticing that, hang on a second, there's so many people that are actually willing to help us, wanting to help us, including in the government organizations, including the investors, including the public, including the farmers, including the dairy industry. I was like, hang on a second. And that's when it started fueling me. That's when I was like, oh, all of those people who told me I can't, like now I actually am going to be like, actually, I can.
About 4 years ago, I went to a startup weekend in Taranaki in a small town, Hawara, 10,000 people. Met my business partner, Jenny there. And so the story is Jenny has been vegan for over 20 years, surrounded by dairy farms, lives in Taranaki. And so it was really important for her when the children, like her children's friends came around, that she could make yummy foods for them, right? Because they were pretty much hated on. Like, she was told that she was being cruel to her children for raising them vegan around there. So that's how she came up with, I think, pumpkin ice cream first, which evolved into cauliflower ice cream. And she brought along this idea to start a weekend. I come along, I'm like, this is really cool. All the ideas were techie. I wanted to do a food idea. So we joined teams, got a few other people to join us that weekend, and built this business. It kind of makes world first cauliflower ice cream. And so what it really is a product with no dairy, no gluten, no soy, no nuts, so completely allergen free, and it's super creamy, very similar to dairy in texture. And we think we've really created a formulation that doesn't exist. It's completely clean label, there's nothing you don't really know in the formulation, and everyone can enjoy it. Along that journey though, we brought it along to Hell Pizza. We met with the director of Hell Pizza, and they gave us a 6-week trial period, which makes sense. It was still pretty wacky. Cauliflower ice cream, how's the New Zealand public really gonna take this in? And it was incredible. Like, we sold out in 4 weeks nationwide. Got lots of press on the whole success. And yeah, it was kind of like the start of something awesome, right? That same year got ranging into Woolworths, 91 stores nationwide, which for any new food company is massive. Despite doing really well in the market, our biggest challenge was...
Welcome to the Startup Theatre podcast. This podcast is produced by Empire Films. Hi everyone, I'm Serge Van Dam. Welcome to this week's episode of Startup Theatre. Well, today I'm being joined by 2 female founders, Millie Kumar from Eat Kinda and Irina Miller from Daisy Lab. So because my 2 brute co-founders who eat animal products and assassinate animals aren't here, I can sort of focus on something I'm passionate about, which is a world without animal agriculture. And so we're going to have a conversation about startups in the food sector that are, focused on alternatives to animal products. In the case of Eat Kinda, it's a cauliflower-based ice cream. And in the case of Daisy Lab, it's basically using microbes to synthetically create proteins that are the equivalent to the same dairy ones we eat, like whey if you're into building muscle. So anyway, it's going to be an awesome conversation. Really looking forward to it.
Today's guest is brought to you by Vanta. Whether you're starting or scaling your company's security program, demonstrating top-notch security practices and establishing trust is more important than ever. Vanta automates compliance for global frameworks like ISO 27001 and SOC 2, saving you time and money, helping you build customer trust. Over 8,000 global companies like Atlassian, Dovetail, Sharesies and Flossy all use Vanta to manage risk and prove security in real time. I actually had dinner with the whole Vanta team and I knew instantly that they would be the sponsor on the podcast. They just genuinely care about startups, and to make it go even one better, they've actually decided that my audience gets a special offer of $1,000 USD off from Vanta. All you have to do is go to vanta.com/startup theatre and enjoy your $1,000 USD off now.
All right. Well, welcome to the studio, Irina and Millie. So we have Irina Miller from Daisy Lab and Millie Kumar from Eat Kinda. So I'm going to start with you, Irina. Can you just tell us a little bit about your background, your story, your startup, what you're trying to make happen in the world?
Right. Never thought I'd be a startup founder. I always say that Daisy Lab is as a child of frustration. Really started more as a social enterprise. We thought we'd just start the conversation in New Zealand and then probably publish and carry on doing our things. I've got corporate background. I do have a master's in bioinformatics, but that's as close as I ever got to the science of what we do prior to Daisy Lab. My kind of career took me after working for a consulting company. I went and worked for our largest dairy giant. I felt really positive, really energized going there because I do think that they've got good business model for selling commodity products all over the world. But while being there, a lot of things became so crystal clear to me. I realized that despite all the talks of pushing value, we're still a commodity business. And the whole country is essentially a commodity business.
And the commodity we're talking about is dairy solids.
Dairy
correct?
solids, essentially, yes. Basically, milk split into molecules sold in big bags of powder. Once you kind of see those numbers, it's really hard to unsee. I'm a numbers person, so my journey into... I turned vegan after working for the dairy industry. But interesting, my journey there wasn't the emotional journey. It wasn't so much about the animal suffering, although it's real, but it was actually about the scale of animal suffering, but also the scale of the impact that it has on our land, on our waters, on our ecosystem. And I kept thinking there's got to be a better way. And driving value instead of volume is definitely a good path of substantially reducing this impact.
And the impact we're talking about, is it to do with climate change? Is it to do with animal
greenhouse
suffering?
gas emissions, water, land, animal suffering. So New Zealand is a very smart country compared to many other commodity countries. We really should not be selling commodities full stop. If anything, we should be selling high value products, again, whatever they are. But even and then going deeper into that, I thought, because I had some basic knowledge of molecular biology and biochemistry, and I knew how some other food ingredients are made, and you don't really need mammals to make them. That's where I was like, there's got to be a better way of making those molecules. Essentially, what New Zealand dairy does primarily is we collect the milk and then we split it into relatively simple parts. Those parts have different values. Usually proteins are the most valuable components, and then we just sell that as components. And that's where I was like, there's got to be a better way. We could just go and make some of those valuable components and kind of cut to the chase and substantially reduce the impact on our land and water and wider ecosystem and the animals.
Awesome. So what does Daisy Lab then do? It makes components, does it?
Well, exactly. That's what Daisy Lab does. So we set out to just prove the concept that this is real science, real technology. It's not just a made-up thing in Silicon Valley. We wanted to bring here, show that it's absolutely doable. So that was our initial starting point. But now we scaled to the point that we do actually, we can make powder that has ingredient that's molecularly identical to the protein that comes from cows. We focused on two different proteins. There's like a number of different proteins in milk, but we can make at a reasonable scale beta-lactoglobulin, which is the main protein in whey. If anyone buys whey protein powder for sports nutrition drink, that's primarily beta-lactoglobulin. It's a bulk ingredient, huge global market for it and constantly growing because it's a very versatile protein. It is highly water soluble, so it doesn't have the grittiness that plant protein has. And essentially it's vegan, so it's an animal-like protein. It's got animal amino acid profile, but it doesn't come from animals, so it's vegan.
So it's like a cow whey protein without the cow.
Without the cow, exactly. Made by yeast. A process is very similar to brewing beer or wine, where you take yeast, you put them in sugar or some sort of carbon, and they eat up the sugars, multiply, grow, and as part of their life cycle, when you're brewing beer, they produce alcohol. In our process, instead of alcohol, they produce the protein that you've asked them to produce. So that's one, the beta-lactoglobulin. And then we've more recently taught our microbes or found a way of producing lactoferrin. It's a very high-value molecule. A kilo of lactoferrin on the commodity market is about $1,000 US.
$1,000 for lactoferrin.
For lactoferrin, we can make it at a fraction of the price if scaled. So this is a very commercially. So if the conversations on the bulk protein kind of go around, well, it's much better for the environment and it's much better for the animals, and in the long run, it can undercut the commodity dairy pricing. With lactoferrin, it's clear. It's undercutting the dairy pricing today.
So where are you at in terms of the business?
We are scaling up. So we're bringing a larger piece of equipment. We're scaling it to a pilot plant. Demo pilot plant, so it's not a commercial plant, but it's a plant that would be representative of a process that would be happening in the dairy factory. Our business model is, and this is where we're different probably from all the precision fermentation, similar sort of startups globally, is that we don't aspire to build the entire value chain. We don't aspire to build a new Nestle. It is costly. It takes probably decades, if not hundreds of years. There's a lot of stainless steel equipment that goes into production of food. So we want to enable the existing companies to produce same ingredients from a different source. So what all we're saying is we're replacing the cow in the delivery truck with the fermenter and the yeast strains. The rest of the process can stay the same. You can use the same equipment to purify the proteins.
Perfect. That makes sense. And so you talked about the high value before. Why wouldn't you go just purely for the higher value proteins like lactoferrin versus the sort of more commoditized things like whey? I don't know what whey sells for in the market.
About $20 US.
Okay.
It's growing, so the price is going up. Why wouldn't we go just for high value? I think, and this is actually validated in the conversations with our potential customers, with the existing large dairy companies. Lactoferrin is more of a shorter term game. It is pretty obvious now that probably bovine source lactoferrin is not going to exist for much longer. The precision fermentation derived lactoferrin will most likely replace it. The price will probably drop from the $1,000.
Sure.
It will sort of, because we now know how to produce it a lot cheaper. So we will just stop extracting it from essentially milk, where we extract it from now. Even though it's commercially really attractive today, going into the future, in me as a climate activist, that's where real greenhouse gas emission savings lies in the bulk protein. But interestingly, from the dairy company perspectives that may or may not think about the climate, some do, some don't. Some really do. Some probably really don't care. But even those who don't care about the climate, they care about supply source. They care about consistency of that supply. And they're starting to question whether that is going to be there in the future. So, interestingly, both are interested.
Right, so different dynamics, but
because it allows them to ensure that they have this consistent supply, even if like some sort of animal disease wipes out half the cow population in a particular area, the dairy companies know they can just turn on the fermenter and they will have at least the protein. They may not have the fats and the sugars. Sugars are not really an expensive ingredient. Fats are sort of valuable some parts of the world, but not others. But they will have the protein, which is arguably the most important component of milk.
Great. Awesome. So, Millie, turning to you, do you want to tell us a little bit about your story?
Yeah, sure thing. So about 4 years ago, I went to a startup weekend in Taranaki in a small town, Hawara, 10,000 people.
Crazy.
At the time, I had just submitted my final fourth year project for food technology at Massey University. So I just finished and went along for fun. We were poor students at the time and they promised free food. So we went along for the 54 hours and it was good fun. Met my now business partner, Jenny there. And so the story is Jenny has been vegan for over 20 years, surrounded by dairy farms, lives in Taranaki. And so it was really important for her when the children, like her children's friends came around, that she could make yummy foods for them, right? Because they were pretty much hated on. Like, she was told that she was being cruel to her children for raising them vegan around there. So that's how she came up with, I think, pumpkin ice cream first, which evolved into cauliflower ice cream. And she brought along this idea to start a weekend. I come along, I'm like, this is really cool. All the ideas were techie. I wanted to do a food idea. So we joined teams, sort of got a few other people to join us that weekend and built this business. And I think we came second in that competition, which was really good. It was my first taste of like high growth startup vibes, and had a lot of fun. And so afterwards, we were both in very interesting phases in our life. I'd just come out of university, and at the time, even at uni, I was working on my own thing. So entrepreneurship was always kind of part of what I wanted to do. And Jenny was going through empty nest syndrome, and so her kids had left.
Home.
Yeah, her kids were leaving home, and she had dabbled in a few little businesses, like she had a food truck and things like that. So she was very entrepreneurial all her life, but didn't really have the opportunity. So we're like, okay, let's do it. Why not? And just to be very clear, so she was like 48 or 49 at the time. I was 22. So very different life stages, very different people. Luckily, I was actually staying in, my partner was staying in Taranaki over that summer. So we were like, oh, this is a good opportunity. Let's dabble. And that's when it started, right? We're like, let's give it a go. Now, really quickly, big challenges. Kitchen formulation doesn't scale.
It's probably worth telling people it kind of makes cauliflower ice
cream. It kind
cream.
of makes cauliflower, but surely everyone already knows that, right? So
They should, yes, they should. But we do have some savages who listen to this podcast, like Jono, who eats animals and stuff like that. So.
Yeah. So cauliflower, it kind of makes world first cauliflower ice cream. And so what it really is a product with no dairy, no gluten, no soy, no nuts. So completely allergen free. And it's super creamy, very similar to dairy in texture. And we think we've really created a formulation that doesn't exist in the world. We've tried lots of products. It's completely clean label. There's nothing you don't really know in the formulation, and everyone can enjoy it. So that's a bit about the product. Yes, so really quickly you realise, what you make in a kitchen isn't scalable. Like, it's going to be a different formulation. Luckily, I was doing my master's at the time as well, was able to tap into some resources at Massey University. So the lecturers were very supportive. So I had that support at Massey University with food technologists to kind of start working on that. We spent 2.5 years developing a commercial formulation. That meant...
What's different between a sort of residential formulation and a commercial formulation for a product like ice cream?
Yeah, I think really quickly we did the numbers on the back of the envelope and realised the ingredients were too expensive. At the time, the formulation had things like cashew nuts, very expensive to source, not allergen free. We really wanted this to be a product for everyone, and so they had to go. So then what's the formulation going to look like? Also, at the kitchen top, ice cream has air in it. We don't have necessarily that kind of equipment that could incorporate air and make a creamy, legit ice cream product. So you have to think about that stabilization of that air. So it became very technical very quickly. And then also thinking about the scale, right? We wanted this from day one. Jenny and I were ambitious. We were like, if we're doing this, we want this to be a global brand. So now you're thinking about the scale down the track, like what you're saying with Daisy Lab, looking at the stainless steel. We were thinking about that from day one and how we formulate the product. And we took time to get it right. So we worked with Massey University, then we scaled up to the Food Bowl, which is part of the New Zealand Food Innovation Network. And that went from 50-litre batches at Massey University to 700-litre batches at the Food Bowl. And then we really quickly, I guess, also grew out of that. But yeah, so 2.5 years in, we got our formulation that we were very happy with. Along that journey, though, we brought it along to Hell Pizza. We met with the director of Hell Pizza, took some samples, and I was lucky my friend at the time was working at a Hell Pizza store, had a great relationship with the manager, shared my story, and they were like, this is really cool. Why not have a chat? We took our samples at the time, which weren't even that good, and they were like, they loved it. They were like, this is really cool. Would love to stay involved, and when you guys are ready, we'll launch this brand. So that was like, great. We already had a customer, right? Like, that's awesome.
Amazing.
And then probably nearly 8 to 12 months later, we were ready with a product to bring to market, and they gave us a 6-week trial period, which makes sense. It was still pretty wacky. Cauliflower ice cream, how's the New Zealand public really gonna, take this in? And it was incredible. Like we sold out in 4 weeks nationwide, and got lots of press on the whole success. And yeah, it was kind of like the start of something awesome, right? That same year got ranging into Woolworths, 91 stores nationwide, which for any new food company is massive. And that was, 2023 was a busy year.
Awesome. And so where are you at now and what's next?
So despite doing really well in the market, our biggest challenge was the scalability in New Zealand. So we really quickly grew out of the food bowl, got more stores from Woolworths, and we just couldn't keep up the way we were manufacturing, and then the cost by not scaling were creeping up as well. And so we decided that now's the time to actually take this global. We've validated the product market fit in New Zealand. We started getting a lot of attention globally through virality on social media, really good press, and we were like, let's make the pivot. So now actually we've done the most, I guess, unpopular thing, and it's stepped back from retail, say no to the supermarkets, and putting all our energy into America. So we're taking the business to America, spent some time there over the last few months, and now we're, I guess, capital raising to push forward into that market.
All right, so let's assume you get your capital raise underway. Obviously, if anyone's listening and wants to participate in taking a cauliflower ice cream company globally, please get in touch with Millie. But let's assume you get the capital raise underway. What are you worried about in terms of succeeding in America, and what are the tailwinds?
I think, at the end of the day, it is a very new product, and there's a risk with that, right? Like, will I find the right contract manufacturer and the right partnerships, the scale of it? We're quite confident from our early testing that the product resonates with the market, but at the end of the day, you won't know until you're actually there selling the product. And I guess we do have strategies to mitigate that, right? So going very, what's the right word? Like small market, niche. Yes, so we're concentrating on the California and West Coast market, and that's very deliberate because of sign-ups we already have. Like over 1,000 people have already signed up from the West Coast saying we want this product. These people that don't know, they haven't tried, they've just seen us on social media and want the product. So that is a very expensive play. Like retail, food retail in the US is very expensive. People complain about New Zealand supermarkets. They look like angels compared to what the reality in the US is, right? And that's what kills people, like massive cash flow cycles. So we're very aware of those challenges, and then building, I guess, the model to be able to also mitigate those.
Since we're talking about death, this is probably a question for both of you. Obviously, there's been a lot of plant-based food brands and products come to market in the last few years. Notably, some of those have either failed to fire or they've fired, but then subsequently sunk. Any ideas on, I guess, why that might be and what that means for your businesses?
Before we go, I'm sitting here gobsmacked when you said that Jenny was 48 when you met her, which now I'm thinking... for any of the listeners that have not met Jenny, go vegan, because I would have never thought that she is in her 50s now. What?
Yeah. Skin's great. It's got great skin, yeah.
Awesome. Well, good advertisement for eating plants.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I was yes.
All right, so there's a reason to eat plants. But again, why are some of these plant-based companies, what's happened to them? Why have they perished?
We've got our own theories in that. Right?
Yeah, I guess so. We could take the global lens and then the New Zealand lens, right? So globally, what's happened is there was this, with anything in the US, things go crazy well and there's hype, and then all these investors put a lot of money into brands. Plant-based was one of those things, right? There was this massive growth period. We saw that a few years ago. Supermarkets opened up extra space on shelves to allow for these new brands to come in, but that's temporary, right? And so you have that chance to either do really well or you don't. The reality is a lot of these brands raised a lot of capital, weren't good products, didn't necessarily maybe do the research on is their product market fit, and then so when that wave died, the products didn't move off shelf, and so they died.
But what was wrong with these products? I don't know if you've got specific examples.
I think just quality, right? Like they've had, for example, a lot of plant-based consumers tend to be clean eaters. Yet you have these products with massive ingredient lists, bunch of, crap names that you can't even pronounce, and that's not knowing your consumer.
Right.
And so they don't want products that have all these like E numbers and things like that. So just not knowing your customer, and then just not necessarily developing really good taste texture. Like for example with eKinder, we've done that. We've spent time on perfecting that formulation. So that's what I think globally some of the challenges.
I agree with you. I'll add to that also the VC model, the classical US VC model, that's particularly done well in like tech, doesn't necessarily scale or doesn't necessarily work as well with food. Food takes time. The consumer research takes time. Sometimes even changing and converting people to something, it just takes time for open up, get interested in something, culturally penetrate into families, make your kind of way onto wider groups of people. It all takes time, and the VC model is just incredibly aggressive. Go fast, spend fast, fail fast, succeed fast. And I think that combined with the fact that valuations were inflated, when we were raising our first round, our first check that came from the US, I had to bargain our valuation down because I was saying, this does not feel right. Let's go lower, because otherwise I won't be able to raise in New Zealand, and I'm worried about what's going to happen next. And I don't think that happens very often.
Sure.
So I think that's a very female
crazy.
thing,
I
right?
love it.
Well, it wasn't a large check, but I thought that sets the bar way too high. Why? It just felt, and I was absolute amateur, obviously, never raised money before, but it felt wrong. And I think I did the right thing in hindsight. I think I should have taken more money, but the fact that I've asked for a lower valuation, I think was the right thing to do. We see a lot of that. That companies just raised way too much, spend money way too quickly, and then VCs get disappointed, and just like the waves pass, the bubbles burst, and now nobody would like. This is just like, oh nope. Alternative protein, that's not.
But the market's still there, right? The brands are doing well, are still doing well. What's happened now is the good brands have remained, and they've listened to their customer, they've evolved their products and formulation, and you're still seeing them grow. Like, for example, I can't remember the name right now, but there's like veggie forward companies in the US, in the CPG space, that are really doing well, raising good amount of capital, but now it's kind of come back to what the market size should be.
Yeah.
And now there's a really good competitive space and still opportunity for good product, good brand that have good customer fit to thrive. I guess the conversation is, what does that mean for New Zealand? I think in New Zealand, though, the challenge has been, we are a tiny country. Like, we're 5 million people. I think that a lot of the companies that potentially haven't done well have had CapEx, factories, that's high overheads. It's hard to, grow a business in the early stage. When things take time, building customer takes time, right? Getting that product market fit takes time, but you've got these overheads that you have to think about. And I think that's probably been the challenge, and that's why deliberately we didn't want to go down that model where we build a factory in New Zealand, because we could see that it's kind of setting yourself up for failure. But it'd be interesting to hear your thoughts on that.
I agree. Yeah, we also this is why we want to. The dairy companies already have, or food and beverage companies already have their channels, already have their customers, they have placing on the shelves. They essentially know their customer, whether we like it or not, whether we want that customer to be different or not. But they have far better instruments and processes to collect that customer feedback on an ongoing basis and constantly innovate based on that. We obviously want to disrupt that market, and also fundamentally I think we want to disrupt the customer perception. So we want more customers buying plant-based and turning plant-based. But I think it's collaboration rather than necessarily head-on disruption.
So you have a dairy company as a shareholder or investor, is that correct?
Yeah, correct.
So how do you think about that, and how do they think about being an investor in your business?
So our shareholders, Tatua Dairy, they're incredibly innovative. I was going to say startup. They're obviously not a startup, but they actually, their culture is very it aligns with a startup really well because they move really fast. They make decisions fast. They're incredibly lean, so you don't have all of that crazy corporate hierarchy, and everyone has to agree on, like, I don't know, one little thing. They generally have been playing in the plant-based space for a while already, so they've got a specific product where they make peptones for like biotech industry, and it sort of came from valorization of their essentially milk products, but they found a market and they realized that there's some plant-based demand for peptones, so they started processing plant-based peptones as well. So they're familiar, as much as a dairy company can be familiar with plant-based market, they definitely have always been interested in
they're just responding to market demand from their customers.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, just in general, I think they're a lot more open to the idea of New Zealand being a protein producer rather than necessarily a dairy producer.
I just wanted to add, and you know that probably more on this, but can I just add, it's not just them though, right? Like our biggest dairy companies have got decent investment in this technology.
Yeah.
Like this is a global thing, precision fermentation and these sort of technologies, and big companies are looking into this, which showcases that this potentially is a way of the future. And it's all about, what I really admire about Daisy Lab is I think in New Zealand sometimes we slow down and we wait to see what's going to happen instead of driving innovation. And I think we're lucky that Daisy Lab, like, you've taken that, I guess, big challenge to make that investment and push forward to make sure we're actually on par with the way the globe is going. I think it's really important to highlight that, because I don't think many people know that some of our biggest companies in New Zealand have made these investments into this technology as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And those dairy companies that haven't globally, they are very interested. So they are talking to the likes of us and the similar startups. And I think it is the way of the future, at least for some of the proteins that we produce. To me, it's a no-brainer. New Zealanders sometimes really undervalue the capital and the assets that we have, particularly the intellectual assets. And our like ecosystem is incredibly sophisticated when it comes to food science, in protein science and protein biochemistry. There's just, I will never probably get tired of talking about it, because this is something nobody else has. In such a concentration in one place, where it's so easy to collaborate, where the government is centric and doesn't stand in the way of innovation. So like in the US, innovation can be stifled because it often becomes political. Like if you support, I don't know, EVs, like must be a Democrat, and if it's a Republican government, it's going to, not support this innovation anymore. Same with alternative proteins. New Zealand's not like that. New Zealand's quite rational in its support of innovation. We don't really see a lot of change in that support with the change of government. So it's a perfect place for innovation, with all the knowledge that we have, with all the collaboration that's enabled, with the stable political system. It's like, where else would you be doing it from? Like, I think it's a really good place for food innovation.
And we're known for dairy.
We're known for dairy,
so we should be leading the dairy, any sort of dairy innovation.
This is what I'm saying. We actually we got really good at dairy, but what we at the same time got really good at is in purifying proteins. Be that plant, dairy, precision fermentation, anything. It's the biochemistry and the behavior of proteins, and being able to take those proteins from the liquid in which they're dissolved or floating. That's a really cool skill. There's a lot of engineering and a lot of processing know-how that goes into that, and it's gold. It's like...
Is there many other startups kind of playing in this space? And by that I mean, in your case, around alternative proteins, or not just proteins, but food ingredients through alternative mechanisms, whether that be precision fermentation or genetically engineering plants or whatever happens to be.
In New Zealand or globally?
Yeah, from New Zealand startups and maybe this part of the world generally.
Not a lot in New Zealand. A lot more players in Australia. A considerable number of players globally, and it's not just dairy. It's a range of different proteins, egg, novel proteins. So the whole industry of producing proteins and functional molecules using microbes is actually quite established. So we're making a lot of our drugs, vitamins, flavorings, enzymes. A lot of food ingredients actually made this way, and we consume them in New Zealand on a daily basis, and then somehow still claim that we are
So do you want to
GMO.
give me an example? Because like I think a lot of our listeners will be saying, ooh, yuck, bacteria making a protein that you might have in your chocolate or in your smoothie or in your something. Whereas, as you're saying, it's kind of common practice in other domains, not just beer, which I drink from time to time, but what other sort of foods are we talking about?
To that, I'd say if you consumed a chocolate-flavored drink, or actually cheese today, if any of your listeners have eaten cheese today, they've eaten a product made with precision fermentation ingredient. In the cheese making process, there is a very important enzyme that's used to coagulate the cheese to make it into this stretchy curd or hard curd. It's called chemosine or rennet. Rennet in the olden days, pre-precision fermentation technology, which is like pre-1990s, 1980s. A bit gross. It was harvested from the lining of the stomachs of newborn calves.
Awesome.
Yeah. So that's how rennet used to be made. It's because that lining has this enzyme. Essentially, it's nature's perfect trick in feeding a newborn calf liquid and then turning it into a solid inside its stomach so it stays full. Same process for humans, same process for all mammals, really. Liquid goes in, and then the enzyme helps to solidify it inside.
I suspect people would object to taking that out of babies to make their cheese.
I think they would. And a lot of people, strangely, if you tell them the story, would violently object to this eating cheese if that was still the way it was made. Luckily, for your listeners, it's not really made this way anymore. 90% of rennet globally and in New Zealand is made using precision fermentation. So there you go. And that ingredient is made using a GMO technology, but it's not labeled as GMO because it doesn't have to be, because there's no organism left in the final molecule.
So most people who are eating cheese or chocolate milk or whatever are eating or already genetically modified produce out of a fermentation process, and we're all fine with it.
We're all fine with it. We don't really think about it. So essentially, if you're already consuming dairy, you're consuming this ingredient. All we are doing is instead of just making this one ingredient, we're saying, well, we're actually going to make the actual protein that way as well. And by doing that, we're going to save a lot of water resources, land, and save on greenhouse gas emissions.
Yeah, I find it a weird thing, especially with friends who I might share a beer with, who are like, ooh, yuck, something made in a vat while we're having a beer, which is like, that was made in a vat with a very similar process. So it's kind of a weird cognitive dissonance of sorts.
Absolutely.
So just thinking about your own startup journey, like reflections on that, what are some of the, I guess, anecdotes or stories that, illustrate the journey of a startup founder, like that come to mind, that epitomize perhaps, this thing happened to me, kind of would only happen to a startup founder. Have you got any good stories in that regard?
I think the most recent one that comes to mind is we were in the US earlier this year, and we were trying to get some ice cream samples over. And it is not easy to do that from New Zealand to the US. You'd think it would be fine with all our tech, but it isn't. And it's very expensive. So we got together half a pallet, ready to go. Probably was going to cost us like $2-3 grand, crazy amount of money. And then guess what we find out? The frozen storage company that was keeping it in Auckland has gone into liquidation.
Right.
And overnight, there's a lock on the storage. Our pickup company's there to pick it up. There's a lock. No one knows who owns the lock. We're trying to contact the company, the liquidators, like 5 different people from the US, being like, oh my goodness, we were going to go to an expo. We needed samples for the expo in 2 days' time. So anyway, I guess that just shows the amount of stress and things that you can't control. Did you get the bolt cutters out, or what happened? We nearly did, man. We nearly did. I don't know if I can say that, but we nearly did. But luckily, last minute, something happened. Right person came, took the bolt cutters off, like cut the lock, and we got our ice cream safely. It was then held in LA in the airport for another day because they were like making sure it's all good. But we got it in.
And
but
it arrived frozen?
It arrived frozen. It was fine. But I think it just shows the kind of shit that you can't control sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah. Have you got any personal tactics for dealing with the uncontrollables that inevitably rise up? And obviously the consequences are real. You can't tell your boss, oh, well, bad luck. Produces.
I think I have learned to become really, I'm still not, I've learned to become a lot more patient than I really was. And I still think I'm not the most patient person. But I was a lot less patient even then. So I think you just learn to become patient and just have to trust that everything will be fine and move on. There's not much you can do, right? Like when the world does things like that. And this is not the first time. We've had our first launch where we wanted to bring ice cream from Auckland to Palmerston North. There was a few cartons. They all turned up crap, melted, disformed. And the distribution company didn't really want to take ownership of that. So things like this always happen, unfortunately. You just have to just chill out, I guess. And
I see. And you, Irina, you're still obviously relatively early in the journey of getting to scale all of that stuff, but no doubt you've, over the last few years, you've had your share of startup experiences. Any you want to share?
I'll just add to Millie's. We have considered bringing ice cream to the US as well, and decided otherwise for that reason. We had we played with some prototype products, and ice cream was one of them. And when we were going to an exhibition in the US, we also considered bringing the ice cream, making the ice cream there, and we then stuff it. We'll just make yogurt. So we brought yogurt, and that we brought just in our
luggage.
Essentially luggage. Yeah, it was like a chili bin with ice packs and powder separately, and just mixed it together.
Importing white powder into America, I'm assuming, is pretty easy.
I know.
Yeah.
We didn't have, we declared it, so yeah, it's a protein powder. So it wasn't for sale, so we didn't have to get any approvals. So it was just essentially just to demo, to show people. We deal a lot with government departments.
From a regulation perspective?
And honestly, a lot of my stories are actually, I think we started with such a low base because everyone who we would meet in the first at least 12 months of our startup journey, which was more like, as I described, more really of a social project, would tell us that we're idiots, we're complete, crazy. Why would you be doing this in New Zealand for so many reasons? It's not going to work.
Did you see that as fuel or neutral or
initially,
just held you back?
Initially, I believed it. Initially, I was like, well, yeah, that's the way of life. But I'm so pissed that nothing's been done by people who have a lot more mandate and power and weight to do that I'm just going to do whatever I can, and then somebody else can take over. So initially, it was like, yeah, I understand it's impossible, but I'm just going to do whatever I can, and then somebody else can do more. But then when I started noticing that, hang on a second, there's so many people that are actually willing to help us, wanting to help us, including in the government organizations, including the investors, including the public, including the farmers, including the dairy industry. I was like, hang on a second. And that's when it started fueling me. That's when I was like, oh, all of those people who told me I can't, now I actually am going to be like, actually, I can. So yeah, it was a little bit like that. There was an interesting shift sometime after the first maybe 12, 18 months. We were like, Nikki and I, so my co-founder, we were like, people keep telling us we can't, but there's a clear regulatory path to do it. We just need to take this path. We just need to basically try. So we did, and we got the approval, and then people say, you will never get any funding. And then we're like, people offer us funding. So I think we should take it. So, and then there was like, oh, you'll never find people to do this. And again, Nikki and I were staring at each other, and I'm like, well, I trust you. You know how to do it. Surely we can hire a good scientist to do that. So again, and we have a brilliant team. We have an absolute, our team, they're just world class.
Anything about the co-founder? Both of you have got co-founders and women co-founders. Anything you want to tell about what you've learned about the co-founder relationship and how that might compare to other relationships in the world?
I think that the reason maybe our companies are standing is because we're woman co-founded companies, right? I think, and I've noticed this as well, women in general, especially, and you see this in my generation as well in friendships. Women talk about everything. There's nothing really off the table, and you just share everything. Even if you argue, but then you sort it out, and there's a lot of love there. I feel like male friendships as well in this generation, and maybe this translates to co-founding relationships, there's like a barrier. There's a little bit of they call it professionalism. There's just not that depth that comes in, and I think that isn't great in a co-founding relationship. You really need to push each other to really understand where things might go wrong, and you need to sort of do that earlier so that you know where each other's boundaries are and you can be supportive. Because with a co-founding relationship, and I mean you know this as well, Irina, it's not just about the business; it's about life. You're in it together. There's stuff that's going to happen. There'll be times with your family, your partner, your children, yourself, and you need that other person to really understand where you're coming from so that they can potentially take more of the responsibility during those times. So during this whole business, I've had 2 grandparents die. I've had to go urgently overseas with my family, and one of them was during when we were just about to launch into Hell Pizza. And if it wasn't that relationship I had with my co-founder, that would have fallen apart, right? Because you can't be like blame game them. It's actually like, no, you need to do this, go do that. I'll hold the fort here, and vice versa, right? There's been times where there's been more on Jenny's plate, and I've had to, lead the business in that way, and that's fine.
I totally agree, and we'll add to your story with what was happening in our dynamic when you said that it adds to the viability of a startup that they're women co-founders. I thought, well, it's because we're stingy. We do actually.
That's actually true as well. We are very stingy.
I'm not allowed to say anything, so I'm just going to say.
Women generally tend to be stingier, so we sort of
more frugal with money.
Squirrel away, and we always over-report our spend and under-report our runway. I don't know. There's just the thing that I think really differentiates a female founding startup, because we're like. We always have
no hate. Always exceptions to the rule, boys.
But for sure, and to female, I'm sure.
Even if let's assume that's true for a minute. I'm not allowed to comment on these matters, but let's assume that's true for a minute. Do you think that's also has the polar opposite effect, which is if things were going well, you probably underspend
for sure, absolutely,
cost
for sure. It's just any trait in life. It has a positive and a negative side to it. So that's I agree with that. But 100% with a co-founder relationship. First, you do need a co-founder. I think you do need a co-founder, whether that's an official co-founder or it's, I don't know, your relative, or you've got a
sounding board, right?
Sounding board.
Yeah.
And you're in the war zone for sure.
Yeah.
You're 100%. In the war zone, and the number of times I had to fall back on my co-founders, and I was so grateful they were there. And likewise, the same that they had a chance to just fall apart, and I was like, no, that's it. I've got this. I can carry it. It's it really builds a different level of connection. So we I think it's more than friendship.
Yes, I mean, it's one of the reasons I love being in startups. I don't, in some ways, I don't really care about the domain. I don't particularly care about software that much, even though that's how I spend most of my life. But it's the intimacy of the founder relationships, and there's just something quite special about those dynamics, which I'm part of and I observe as well. I'd much rather be in those. And I totally get your point. I mean, we talk a lot at Startup Theatre about the violence or the violence of startups. It's a combat sport. And a lot of bad, if you're in the boxing ring for 10 years, you're going to get a lot of punches.
And that's maybe something the guys, and again, it's broad generalization. I'm sure there are guys that can be vulnerable and bring the feelings and the emotions to the work or founder relationships as well. For those who don't, my advice would be do, because it actually does solidify. It gives you more of that resilience. Everything was pretty rosy in my life for a very long time during our startup journey, and I felt like I was the one. Yeah, of course. Take I don't know, somebody would have a breakup, a hard relationship turn, and I'd be like, take it easy, take it easy, go home. There's no I've got this. I can pick it up. It's an important it's an important journey. It's an important thing you're going through. It's not just something you need to soldier through, particularly if there's capacity for others to do it. And then when something similar happened to me, and I was like, how am I going to run this company? Like, I can't even see like how I'm going to make it to Friday. And people were there for me, absolutely, saying exactly the same things. Irina, take a day off, stay home, deal with whatever that is that's happening to you. And that's just such a cool experience.
Sounds like you've just created a really good culture, Irina. Right?
I don't know.
I guess
take all the credit for it. It's definitely the
take
team.
the credit. Take the credit. Something else that women don't do.
Yeah.
Take credit.
Okay, I'll take credit.
But I think also that just speaks to the fact that vulnerability is actually as a strength, right? Like being vulnerable is really, really good. And I think as women founders, maybe we're just more vulnerable, and that's why we lead stronger teams and create really good culture.
I think it's just something to think about for those who aren't. I think Particularly, I think there are times to be vulnerable and there are times to maybe not be vulnerable. But when the time is okay to be vulnerable, I think you really should, if those are the feelings, because that makes you stronger for the battle that you need to fight. And it kind of clears a lot of the things, and then you're ready.
And there will be more battles.
There will be more battles all the
yeah.
time. So I think that's a marathon kind of approach. I think it's also a very good idea. Even if your runway is only 12 months, it's still a marathon. There still will be weeks where you have to really give it 250%. But there are times when you need to tell people, actually, now is the time to take it easy and exhale and recharge a little bit.
Yeah.
Thanks. All right. Hey, well, look, we're getting towards the end of our conversation. Maybe a couple of quick fire questions, some random ones, just to spice things up. Either of you can answer them, both of you can answer them, up to you, really. Easiest one we always ask is advice to your 16-year-old self about, particularly around startup life. What would you give?
Try it, because I never thought I would ever do. My mum ran a business, and I was like, I'm never going to do it. This is bullshit. I'm just going to have a safe corporate job. So that would be my advice: is actually don't be that against it. There's a lot in it to be.
So there will be people who listen to Startup Theatre because they want to be in a startup but are in a safe corporate job. What's the rationale of why they should try it?
The growth is like
personal growth. You mean?
Personal growth is incredible. There's no course or an MBA or a corporate promotion that would ever deliver as much as a startup experience.
Great. And you, Millie?
Oh, look, have more fun at 16. I feel like that's something I don't regret, is having the fun I had, right? And I think I was quite a high achiever at high school and uni, and I feel like I just should have had more fun.
That seems fair.
Yeah.
Perfect. If you were going to be reborn as anyone, who would it be?
A cat.
A cat. Why?
Have you seen cats? Like what they do and what their life is like?
Well,
like that.
The two we have just constantly hiding.
Oh no, ours just sleep.
Yeah, so it depends
like
what
they
cat.
sleep. They sleep and they eat and they go for a walk and then they come back and they eat some more and sleep.
Okay, you disappoint me, Irina. You, Millie?
Myself. I'm having a great life.
Perfect. That's a great answer. What do you hope will be true in your industries? I mean, obviously you're in a similar industry, but what will be true in the next 10 years? What do you hope will be true? And again, you've got slightly different contexts, but...
It kind of is going to be the next Ben & Jerry's global brand.
Yay.
You can buy it anywhere.
Perfect.
Absolutely.
That sounds right.
At least half of the proteins we consume today in the form of dairy, egg, any other animal-derived proteins are going to be alternative source.
Okay. And your last meal, you're about to get shot. Your last, or seriously punched because you're a startup founder. What's your last meal?
That is so tricky.
Hard. We're foodies sitting on
so
this
much.
couch.
What amateurs.
Oh, last meal. So my mum, I'm Indian, so my parents make really good Indian food. So I would be like a rice and dal. Like
I
nice
love
and simple,
dal as well.
rice
There
and
was
dal.
part of my so either dal or Thai curry. But I actually had a really good hemp burger last night, and I'm sitting here and I was like, if it was today, I'd want the same burger.
Perfect.
Did you make it?
No, it was in one of the restaurants here in Wellington.
Oh, you tell me. Oh, no, it was in the
Do you want me
leather.
to do a shout out?
It's up to you. Yeah.
Yeah, the Rosie's Mexican cantina.
Ooh,
Their
okay.
hamburger was really good.
Put that on the
Perfect.
list.
Shout out to Rosie's
Yeah,
Mexican
it was such
Cantina.
such a awesome texture, and it wasn't kind of like, it was very meat-like, but it wasn't like a Beyond or Impossible meat-like. It was, you still know you eat plants, but it was like, that was really good texture.
Good to know.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us in the studio. Really appreciate having you here at Startup Theatre. Good luck in your journeys. Love the ambition. All the best.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Serge.
Thank you for having us.
All right, we get to the section where we highlight startups that we're interested in or we want to support. So in the startup spotlight, we're going to go through a few companies. So I was recently at Electrify and ran into Justine McIntyre from Injury Hub, injuryhub.com. So she is a doctor. She thought that there was a way in which digital technologies could help people with the rehabilitation journeys. She's proven out that the product can scale to the US, and so she's moving there. So I really wish Justine and the team all the best with getting Injury Hub into the American market. Who do you want to spotlight, Irina?
So many great startups in New Zealand. I will do a shout out to Opo Bio, opobio.com. It is New Zealand's first and, as far as I know, the only cellular meat startup. They create different starting cells for different types of meat. So essentially, if anyone globally wants to create the special type of beef that comes from New Zealand, but without hurting any cows, then Opo Bio is the company they should talk to.
Awesome. And you, Millie?
Keeping relevant to the theme, I want to give a shout out to Emma and Renee from Teeny. So they're making powdered oat milk. So there's no oat milk powder on the market. So they're creating that, and I think they're wanting to scale it globally. So very ambitious young founders. My understanding is from Christchurch. So big shout out to them, teiny.co.nz.
Well, all the best. We love startups at Startup Theatre. If you want your startup highlighted, let us know. Thanks for joining us. Well, that was a great conversation with Millie and Irina. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the perspectives, their experience. Food is just so central to the mammalian experience. It's not like software, I guess, where I spend my time, where you can just try a new thing, and if you like it, you realize straight away, and then you keep using it. Changing human habits around what we eat and why we eat it. It's a really hard problem, but I think Daisy Lab has real promise in creating alternative sources of dairy equivalent proteins, and I can see how New Zealand and other developed countries can actually produce these things without the footprint, the carbon footprint, the animal suffering footprint, the water consequences, all of that stuff. So I'm really excited about the possibilities of companies like Daisy Lab, and it kind of is just, can you make treats out of healthy stuff? And I really like the idea of cauliflower ice cream. My kids certainly love it. So yeah, I'm really excited for what they're going to go and do and their big adventure in America. Anyway, we love startups of all shapes and sizes here at Startup Theatre. Thanks for joining us. See you next time.